Hi, I'm the Mitten, and you're listening to the Mitten on Knittin. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to episode 5 of the Mitten on Knittin. There's 155 days left till Rhinebeck, so let's see what I've been up to. In loose threads this week, of course, since I'm going ahead full bore on the scarf for Rhinebeck, needless to say, I've been looking for every distraction under the sun, because now I'm just knitting, and I know what the pattern is that I'm putting in, so I needed to find something else. Anyway, last year I found this article on the Knitty blog about sane knitting patterns from Scotland. It's traditional knitting patterns that have little meanings associated with them. My nephew Alex is a fly fisherman, and he lives in Michigan, so naturally he needs mittens. Yes, even in May they get a little bit of snow and cold out there. So when I was reading this article, I ran across one of the patterns that was called Midge and Fly, which I thought was really cool because he makes little midges to go fishing. And the other cool thing about it is the mittens are made with Cheviot fleece, and I just happen to have a little bit of Cheviot fleece hanging around. So I worked out this pattern for a pair of mittens. It's all charted, and it's a 2-color pattern. And one of the colors, one of the traditional dyes for the color is stinging nettle. So, of course, I was out in the garden this weekend when the sun finally came up, and looking around for nettle, because I know there's nettle in my garden and I have the scars to prove it. So I found a nice patch of stinging nettle, which I immediately told Mr. Mitten, don't weed this, which he immediately thought I was totally insane. But hopefully sometime in the next week or so I'll get out there and harvest nettle. I understand there aren't supposed to be any of those thorns down in the first inch coming out of the ground. And I'll use that for a natural dye for some mittens for Alex. So that should be kind of fun and a nice distraction. Now the question is, do I wait until I finish the scarf before I start on this little dyeing, spinning, knitting project, or do I dive right in? I don't know. We'll see. What's fitting for the mitten this week? Well, this week, of course, I'm still wearing the Jared Flood scarf, and went back to my warm wool socks instead of the lighter wool socks, because it's just been chilly. This morning it was 39 degrees, so I even added back into the mix my Shetland fingerless mitts. I put the Mamelukes away, and I don't know where I put them away. They're somewhere, though. I'm sure they're in a very logical place, and I'll find them when I go to finish putting the winter coats and everything away. But it allowed me to get the Shetland fingerless mitts out. That was the first hand spun I ever did on a drop spindle. So it's got a pretty little gray cuff and then a cream hand to it. And then I took a piece of the gray, and I went around the fingertip, finger area, and tied a nice little bow. I like them. They're kind of cute. And for sure they keep me absolutely warm. So that's what's fitting for the mitten. What's the mitten knitting? I'm knitting those socks. I got up to right where I think the heel's gonna go, and I stopped. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's a little bit of self-knowledge, but I'm gonna let them sit a few more days before I try them on again and measure carefully and maybe take pictures and then think about it for another few days before I attempt heels 7 and 8. So yeah, those socks, I've been knitting those socks. And the Rhinebeck scarf, that's coming along well. I finished up the first cake, which was 220 yards, and I'm on to the next. So it looks really good. I did find a purl stitch that should have been a knit stitch 52 rows down from where I am now. So I don't know if I'm going to ladder down and pick that up or let it be. I think maybe it's just my critical eye seeing it, but I'm on the 6th section of 12, so is it 12 or is it 8? Well, I wrote it down somewhere. But the scarf is coming along nicely and it's draping really nicely, and I'm very happy with that. On my wheel this week, I have Hipstrings Buoy in Beacon, which is yellow streaked with some golden yellows and some greenish yellows. It's nice. It's kind of a tweedy yellow color. So I wasn't really gonna spin that up yet because I have 2 4-ounce braids of it. I was going to work on this pink Shetland, which was the first colored roving that I bought. And it's actually why I wanted to get a wheel, because I'd been working on it on a drop spindle and it was taking forever to spin up. And I have the pattern for it all picked out and everything, but I've never finished spinning it, so I thought it would be a lovely spring spin. It's like a pink lemonade color. It's really springy and in texture springy. Well, it's color springy too, so it's doubly springy, which I thought would be great for spring. Plus it would finish that up. I finished about a third of it on the drop spindles, but I wanted to get a wheel because I knew I could do it a lot faster on a wheel. Anyway, I couldn't find it, so I ended up just sticking my arm into the fiber bin and pulling out whatever I grabbed onto, which was the buoy, and it's going to be pretty nice. We'll see how much yardage I get before I decide what to make out of it. What's finished? Well, the gradient is drying still because it's been raining all week, and the Gerber daisy is drying still because it's been raining all week. But I did cake up, the merino did dry, and I did cake up one of them to use on the scarf. So there you have it. That's what's finished. I don't think there'll be much finished this week either. We'll see. You never know. Maybe I'll end up with a lot of energy tomorrow and come home from work and spin for all 20 minutes that I get. No, I'm just kidding. I try and spin every night because it helps me in my consistency with my spins. So that's what I'm trying to do this month, is 15 minutes a day at least. But, it progresses slowly. I guess I just want to stay home and spin all day. But, you got to go to work. Oh well. And now a word not from a sponsor. Periwinkle sheep yarn, lovingly hand-dyed in small batches. Visit the Periwinkle Sheep online at periwinklesheep.com to see the latest colors Karen has come up with, like Watercolors 2 Zitrone, or stop by and see her in person at the Massachusetts Sheep and Woolcraft Fair, May 28th and 29th in Cummington, Massachusetts. Periwinkle Sheep Yarn. It's to die for. The color dye, not the other one, 'cause that would be bad. In Stash Up Down this week, I didn't get any fiber or yarn, but I did pick up a new pair of Chiagu needles it's for the Rhinebeck scarf though, so it's totally justified. It wasn't just because I like the way that the cable spins on the needle. Oh, I do love that though. You get if you get just the clover bamboo needles, the cable is solidly attached to the needle, so you have to try and spin the needle, and then the joint breaks, or you end up flapping yourself in the face with the end of the cable. On the Chiagu needles, bamboo needles, the joint flexes and rotates, so you can really never flap yourself in the face with the cable. And I know it sounds like a silly thing, but it really makes a difference to me when I'm knitting. And I just found myself this morning when I was knitting on the train just spinning the needle because I could without moving the cable. But they're really pretty, and they're very comfortable in my hand too. So that's what I got this week. Where I want to be is more like where I wasn't this week. The Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival took place, and we had a lot of people from the RAV boards went down, and thank goodness they posted pictures, because there were a lot of us who didn't get to go, and we were very jealous. They had 1,175 fleece there at the fleece auction, and from what I've seen, from what some of the girls picked up, there were some beautiful fleeces. So that's where I wasn't. And where I won't be is the Massachusetts Sheep and Woolcraft Fair, May 28th and 29th. That's supposed to be really nice. Well, maybe something will happen and I'll get there, but odds are no. But that's the next big festival coming up, and so I'm already stalking vendors to see what's going to be carried there. So that's where I wanted to be and where I wasn't, and where I won't be. In Grabby Paws this week, I was looking at classes. First, I was looking at the classes at Rhinebeck to see if there was a Saturday morning class that I could take, or maybe even a Friday. There's a chance I could get over there on Friday, but I didn't really find anything that I had to have as far as the classes went. So I passed on that, but I still wanted to take a class. So I ended up getting a Craftsy class instead, which I think is going to be fun. I've downloaded the link for it and everything, so hopefully next weekend I'll be able to take a look at that. And I've heard good reviews about it. I got the one on hap shawls because I'm knitting the hap shawl and it turned into a tablecloth. My corners were boxy instead of flat, and I know it's a problem with the increases, so hopefully there'll be some type of explanation in the Craftsy class. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So that's up with Grabby Paws, looking for classes. In dough this week, for the Rhinebeck scarf, because you have to have a few mistakes, I knit the wrong side on the right side, or the right side wrong. I knit the back pattern on the front and the front pattern on the back. So I had to think out, but I ripped back maybe 4 rows. So that wasn't too bad until this morning when I found that one stitch that's a purl and it's supposed to be knit and it's 52 rows down, but we'll just forget about that for now. As far as the socks go, like I said, I stopped before the heels because I just couldn't do that right now. I just need a little bit more time to accept that there may be heels 9 and 10 in my future. So we'll just pause those for a few days. So that's what's up in dough. Where I'll be, home and work and home. There's no guild meetings, no festivals, no fairs. Home and work and home. Which means that I'll get some more knitting and spinning time in, which is always really good. So, a really short where I'll be this week. In questions for the mitten this week, Kath asks, thank you for asking, Kath. She wants to cast on a new project, but she's still working on a hat, a cowl, and a pair of fingerless mitts. So is it fickle to cast on a pair of socks for her dear husband, who desperately needs socks because he's still walking through the snow barefoot due to a lack of hand-spun socks? So can she do that now, or does she have to wait until she finishes something? Because if she does it now, is it going to make her unfinished projects feel neglected? She doesn't want to hurt their feelings. So my response to you, Kath, is no, I don't think it's fickle at all. First, it's for your husband, and he is one of the best husbands ever and has won Husband of the Year for many, many decades, so he's totally knit-worthy. So that's number one. And number two, you don't have any socks on the needles. You have mittens, you have a cowl, and you have a shawl. So you always have to have a pair of socks on the needles, and this would totally qualify because if there's a knitting emergency where you need to knit round and round and round, you wouldn't have socks to knit. So it's important that you always have socks to knit. It would only be fickle if you already had a pair of socks on the needles. And then if those reasons aren't enough, according to the items rule, at any given time, you can have a single item from any knitted item category on the needles at the same time and still not be considered fickle. For example, you could have a sweater, and that means you could have a cardigan and a pullover, a hat, a cowl, a scarf, a shawl, blanket, mittens, glove, fingerless mitts, and 2 socks. They don't necessarily have to be the same pair, but a maximum of 2 socks on the needles without being fickle. Now, if you had like 2 cardigans, that would be fickle because you already had 1 cardigan on the needles. Or if you had 2 pairs of fingerless mitts, also that would be fickle. Although you could have 2 fingerless mitts, 1 from each from a different pattern, and that would not be fickle, and that's the items rule. Alternatively, you can use the big to small rule, which is sort of what I use. I have a big blanket, a large item, a sweater, a medium item, a shawl, a small item, a scarf, and a tiny pair of mittens on the needles all at the same time, plus the pair of socks, because you always have to have the pair of socks. So, big, medium, small, large, small, and tiny, all at the same time, plus socks, which is the big to small rule, and that's totally acceptable, and is not considered being fickle to your current works and projects. And so there's no need for you to wait to cast on. You can go ahead full bore and cast on the socks. Welcome them into your in-progress family of knitting happiness, and you will not hurt the feeling of your current in-progress projects by bringing them the joy of a new pair of socks to join them. So I hope this answers your question. Thanks for asking. Thanks for joining us this week. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.